This is episode 33 of the Shame Proof Your Life podcast, the one where I talk about 20 years of marriage. I'm your host and life coach, Danita Bremer. Have you ever received a prompting that you ignored for a long time, like 17 years? This podcast is that for me. I'm telling my stories, I'm learning from my past, and I'm inviting you along for the ride. My intention is that you will find hope, understanding, and community by hearing my story. All right, are you guys ready? This is going to be a fun and potentially long episode because I decided that I wanted to talk about my amazing husband. This podcast episode will come out on August 30th, and 2 days later, September 1st, 2021, we celebrate 20 years of marriage. You guys, how did we get here? It has gone by so quickly. I still feel like I'm barely older than 20 years old. Yet here I am, an old lady, married for 20 years. And we were together or dating for 2.5 years before that. So this man I call husband has been the person that has been in my life the longest, besides myself, of course. Yeah, isn't that weird to think about? And I was trying to think of like one story or a few shorter stories to tell when it turned into this huge brainstorm about our entire marriage. And so that's why I say this episode might be a little bit longer, because I have several stories. And I'm just going to let myself meander down memory lane and totally love and celebrate on my husband, who has been such an amazing, amazing part of my life. When people say, I'm so glad that I have you to do life with, and I'm for sure going to get weepy starting already. Like that sums it up. Like, I am so grateful and so glad that I have had Frankie Bremer Jr. to experience life with. He is like the most fun, amazing partner for life, like truly, honestly. So you all, if you've listened to my podcast for a while, you have heard the story of the last first kiss. And that is the story of when we first kissed. And it's a fun one. But just to kind of give a little recap, we met in college, freshman year of college, in very beginning of the year 1999. We lived in the same co-ed dorm together at the University of Washington. And those first couple months, actually, my kids love this story that when I first met him and got to know him, he was kind of letting all the girls fawn over him and like, ooh, Frankie. And I thought he was a little bit like a player and it was a little rude. And so I sent him hate mail. And we do not still have the letter. That would be so fun if we did. But I send him mail through the university mail system telling him how I did not think he was, I don't know, I guess I did not think he was making good choices. I don't know. I can be a little uptight and, think I know what everyone else should do with their lives, apparently. I've come a long way. But after several weeks of kind of hanging out, and I had a fiance when I met him. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart. And so over spring break that year, I broke up with my high school sweetheart. And then I started dating my now husband. And our first official date was at the Space Needle in Seattle. Super fun, right? And I kind of think that this date is indicative of sort of our entire relationship, because we got all dressed up nice and fancy. And then we hopped on the public bus to go downtown to the Space Needle. So here we are, like dressed all fancy on a stinky public bus. And that's kind of how we are. We're kind of fancy people. We like having fun experiences and even sometimes fancy experiences, but we also don't want to spend any extra money than we have to. And so, public bus it is because we were college students and we got the bus for free. And I don't remember actually very much of that date, except very clearly in my memory is that I dropped my roll on the floor. Like it was one of those hard rolls that you pick it up and it kind of bounces all over the place. And I did not grow up doing fancy dinners, or like, I didn't know what fork or what spoon was for what, right? But he had a little bit more knowledge of that because he went to a private military school. So he got a little bit of that influence. And he did the whole like stand up when I get up to go to the bathroom thing. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, yeah, this is like proper etiquette or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, you don't have to do that for me. Right. So that's pretty indicative of our entire relationship. I don't feel like we're too formal, but I guess in some ways we are. So that is kind of one of the earlier memories. And then shortly after that, and you'll see kind of, I'm probably going to focus a little bit more on the fun, exciting memories, but there are a few sprinkled throughout that were, sad and some not fun memories. And in May of 99, he invited me to fly to Georgia, where he had gone to this military school, because he wanted to go to the graduation because a lot of his buddies were graduating. And so I was like, well, I don't want to pay for that. And he's like, oh, I'll pay for you. And so we went out, and on the tarmac before our plane ever lifted into the air, I just had this terrible, terrible feeling. And we really didn't know each other. I mean, I feel like we knew each other, but we hadn't been dating very long. And I just turned to him and I said, I feel really like horrible, like something bad is going to happen. And I just want you to know that whatever happens, I love you. And that may have been the first time one of us said, I love you. I don't know. We didn't really keep track. And he kind of was like, okay, you're kind of weird. But that weekend when we were in Georgia for graduation, one of his buddies was drunk driving and wrecked his car. And another one of his buddies was in the car without a seatbelt, and he passed away. So I will tell you, one of the most heart-wrenching, sad experiences I have had in my life is watching a hospital waiting room full of 18, 19-year-old boys crying on each other's shoulders because one of them died. I have never felt like more of an outsider, and just, it was honestly, one of the saddest experiences of my life, including my own mother passing away. It's just so sad to see almost fully grown men weeping and crying and mourning. So that's kind of an experience that I think in a way bonded us together. It's something that I was able to witness of him, seeing him in a vulnerable moment. And then, of course, the next year, my mom died and knocked me off my feet. And he was totally my rock during all of that. He was so steady and like just everything that you would want in someone to be there for you and not judge you and just love you along the way and let you grieve. And I think it was that Christmas after my mom died, his gift to me was 2 framed pictures of my mother. And I opened them and I immediately started crying. And I think he felt bad, like, oh, should I have not given you this? And I was like, no, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's just that, the grief is still fresh. And so I cried. This is one thing I do not fantastically love about myself, that I am pretty emotional. I do think that my whole life I learned to push down the emotions, and being with my husband as a safe place. And I'm not going to say that it has always 100% been this way, but for the most part, he has felt like a safe place and has allowed me to let out many of those emotions. And I'm weepy today, not just because going down memory lane, but I just have some emotions close at the surface this week that I have been processing and going through. So, again, him being there through my mom's passing and all the things that I had to deal with after my mom died, and just really being a solid place for me to land. I don't know what I would have done without that. Like, honestly. And the next year, my mom died in the year 2000. The next year in 2001, we got married. So we're on a little bit more of an upward trajectory here now. And we didn't have a lot of money. Neither of our families had a lot of money. And so we planned and paid for our own wedding. And that was also quite a bonding experience. I was not the kind of bride who was very specific in what I wanted. In fact, I kind of wanted to just go to, the courthouse and get married that way, but he did not want to do that. And he wanted to have a proper wedding for his family to celebrate with him. He's kind of sentimental. He's very, very loyal to his family. He's a little bit of sentimental, much more sentimental than I am in most cases. Less emotional, but more sentimental. And that, I would say, was a good experience, at least for me. We didn't fight a lot about a lot of things. For the most part, we came together and made decisions that worked in our budget and that we both liked and enjoyed. Of course, we did have help from family. I think I mentioned on the podcast before that my dad paid for my dress, and his grandmother catered, even though we didn't really want a catered wedding. She really wanted to do that. So we let her do that. And I thought that we should not go on a honeymoon because we were in college. We didn't have a lot of money. And he absolutely insisted that we go on a honeymoon. And so we decided to go to Hawaii. And some definite memories came out of that trip. One thing that I've heard said is you can either have a good time or you can have a good story. And as I've been reflecting on my 20 years of marriage, I'm like, I think we've had a good time and a good story. And this is a case in point here. On our honeymoon, we didn't rent a car for most of the time. We were on Oahu and Honolulu and just exploring there and using the public transportation and things. But one day we wanted to go up to the North Shore. So we rented a car for one day and we drove up to the North Shore and we went boogie boarding and we laid out in the sun. We totally got sunburnt. And when we walked to the car after our day at the beach, the car had been broken into and he had accidentally left his wallet in the car. And so then we had to deal with canceling credit cards and all of that while, in Hawaii. And this is one thing about my husband. He just handles everything with so much grace and so much like he gets upset. He doesn't, it's not like everything bounces off of him, but he's just very level-headed and clear-minded. And so he took care of all of that. And then we returned the rental car and had to pay I don't remember what it was, a few $100s for a broken window. And we learned our lesson to always get the rental car insurance. And so now we do, which actually we've done a ton of traveling in our lives. And I don't know that we have needed it. I can't remember a time, but we probably have once or twice. But even despite that experience and seriously getting so fried, so sunburnt, I feel like our honeymoon was amazing. I look back at it with fondness, and then I'm just like, oh yeah. And the car got broken into, kind of thing. It seemed like just a little blip. And I think that is in large part because of how my husband is and how he just like takes care of everything, and it's not a big deal. Um, so then shortly after that, well, we spent another year at school or so. I graduated in 2002, and then he graduated in 2003. And as soon as he graduated, we moved from Seattle to the Bay Area, to Sunnyvale, California. And I was pregnant with our first child. And he just, I mean, it was through Lockheed Martin, who he works for. They moved us down there. But like basically everything he just took care of. He took care of me, and he took care of the move. And I just signed where I was supposed to sign. And I remember on that house hunting trip, we went down to California to look for an apartment or a place to live. And I told him, if you find us a place with laundry in the apartment or in the wherever we live, you'll never have to do laundry the rest of your life. And I will say, I think I have upheld my end of the bargain. There may have been once or twice when he has done laundry, and I'm not saying he had to, but he chose to. He hasn't folded much laundry. I will say that. Occasionally he'll help me fold, but I do almost all of the laundry folding. And so it's kind of a funny thing that I said, and I have mostly kept my word. And then of course, having babies together, the night our oldest was born, December 31st, she came faster than we thought. And like from the time they gave me the epidural to, I was like, they were like, oh, this will take a few hours. And then about 20 minutes later, they were like, you're ready. And so it was kind of a whirlwind, and she was born, and then she screamed for hours, and he put his finger in her mouth to get her to stop screaming. And the nurse was like, you can't do that. And he said, I'm her father. I can do whatever I want. And so kind of indicative of him and just how he takes charge, and he just makes things work. And yeah, like growing together as young people, raising other little humans is sometimes very challenging. But I feel like we've done a good job together. There have been moments of frustration and anger and tiredness and exhaustion and all the things. But overall, I feel like we are a fantastic team. And, maybe one of us is down, the other one takes care of whatever needs to happen, and the other one is down, and we just swap back and forth. So he is an amazing dad. Seriously, way better of a dad than I am of a mom. And I think I'm a pretty fantastic mom, but like he can handle everything. He does work stuff. He does home stuff. He shows up at all the activities and games, the soccer, the gymnastics, the softball, the baseball, the Pinewood derbies, whatever, whatever's going on, he wants to be there and support his kids. And he's like I have told him so many times, like, you don't have to go to everything. You have a full-time job, and like, sometimes you have to choose. And he's like, nope, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. So he is so amazing in that way. In fact, in 2005, it just happened to coincide with our 5-year anniversary. His grandparents offered us to stay at their condo in Maui. And we were like, Hawaii for free? Like, heck yeah. And so we had bought a condo, and we didn't have a ton of extra money, but we were like, we have to make this work. We're never going to get like free accommodations in Hawaii. And so we went, and I was like, I think we should let Nina stay with friends. So she was like 2 years old at the time. And he was like, what? No, she is my baby girl. We cannot leave her. So I was like, okay, we can take her if you want to. And we get to Hawaii, it's a pretty long flight. And we get there, and the first couple days, you wake up at like 7 because the baby wakes up at 7. You go out, you explore, do one or two things. And then you got to be back at the condo at like noon until 3 p.m. because she sleeps. That's her nap time. So then we're stuck at the condo. And then we have from like 3 to 7 to like go get dinner and do something else. And on about day 2, he turns to me and he says, "You were right. We should have left Nina." And I was like, well, now we know. So that's kind of a fun story. He just couldn't leave his baby girl. But we still enjoyed Maui as much as we could. So fun. And here's the thing is that Nina doesn't even remember that trip very much. She has a couple of little memories. Shortly after that, probably around 2006, I don't have the greatest memory, but I'm cobbling this together. So I apologize, Frankie, if any of this is wrong. He has an amazing memory too. Before my mom died, one thing she told him was, "Can you please take my daughter to a concert, like a real rock band concert?" And I was like, I don't need to go to a concert. So the Eagles were playing in the Bay Area. And he's like, "I'm taking you. We got to go. I promised your mom I would take you to a concert." So he took me to the only concert other than like middle school and high school band concerts. The only concert I've ever been to was the Eagles. And it was fantastic. It was a little loud for my liking, but I love the Eagles and it was a fun time. Okay, so another thing, as I look over these 20 plus years of being with this amazing man, he has always taken care of every time we have moved, which hasn't honestly been too much. But in 2006, we moved from the Bay Area to Colorado, where we live now. And he just took care of all of it. I mean, the company did move us out here, so it's not like he packed up the boxes. You know, we had movers come, but there's a lot of paperwork and coordination and all of that. And I was pregnant at the time with our second, and he took care of all of it. We did come out for a house hunting trip. And yeah, I mean, we looked at like probably 40 or 50 houses in a matter of 2 days and found a house. So it was successful. But yeah, I'm just like so struck by all the times we've moved, you know, from Seattle to the Bay Area, from the Bay Area to Colorado, and then, you know, moved to and from Germany. And he just is on top of everything. And I had a light bulb moment a few months ago where I went, "Oh, I'm not a planner. I'm an organizer." And he's like, "Yeah, you think?" And I was like, "Well, I just always thought since I love to organize, like planning and organizing, it's the same thing, right?" And he's like, "No, no, no. You like to organize, but you do not like to plan." And he is fantastic at planning and executing the plans. And so I feel like I'm spoiled. Like I haven't really had to do a whole lot. You know, it's not like I'm not there at all. Like I'm part of it, but he's the spearhead. He's the kind of the mind behind all of it. And speaking of moving and owning houses, we have done many, many home improvement projects. We together kind of enjoy them. Of course, you know, that enjoy is relative, but we redid our condo kitchen when we bought a condo in the Bay Area, and we tiled the patio, the balcony, that's the word, and painted and some kind of normal things, but we did redo the entire kitchen right before we left. And then in our house here in Colorado, we totally overhauled our backyard. That was a very large project that included a retaining wall and bringing in like a ton of dirt and sodding and tearing out a giant deck and rebuilding a deck. We've finished our basement. We've remodeled our kitchen. We've remodeled our master bathroom. He alone has painted vaulted like 20-foot tall walls. And really, he has done most of all of this home improvement stuff. I have been there to hold up beams and hold things steady and to give my advice and to help design, but we have done most all of it DIY. We've hired out a few little parts here and there, but he has built walls and we've hung drywall, like we really have done all the pieces of all the projects at some point. We usually do it the first time ourselves, and then we figure out, oh, I don't like doing this, so I'm going to hire it out as much as possible, except for tiling. We seem to always keep doing the tiling, and we hate doing the tiling. And I think, Frankie, next time we need to tile, we shouldn't do any tiling. We should hire that out. But he's an engineer, and he's so amazing at working with his hands and his mind. Like, you guys, he is such a phenomenal human in general. He loves surprises, and I hate surprises. I do not like to be surprised. I like to know what is going on ahead of time, which is kind of funny since I don't really like to plan. I don't like to do the logistical planning. I like to dream. But he surprised me with a piano one Christmas. Like, for Christmas, you guys, he surprised me with a piano. He has surprised me with multiple trips. Like, hey, I planned this whole trip. We're going, pack your bags, like we went to Disneyland once and we didn't tell the kids. Well, he surprised the entire family with a trip to Disneyland one time for Christmas. And then another time we went to Disneyland, and together we planned it and we didn't tell the kids. And as we're walking up to Disneyland, they're still not, like, nobody's asked us any questions. So we stopped them and we're like, guess what? We're going to Disneyland. And the girls start screaming with excitement. And my son starts crying because he is like me. He does not do well with spontaneous plans. So we laugh at that now, but at the time it was kind of frustrating. For our 10th anniversary in 2011, we left our kids with friends for 10 days and we went back to Oahu, where we went on our honeymoon and had so much fun. Like, we had a little bit of a bigger budget. And the one story that it's kind of goes along with, you can either have a good story or a good time, is we rented kayaks on the west side, the west shore. And we kayaked out to this little island that's like, I want to say like a mile out. So not too far. And then you get to see these birds, and some people just hang out there and have a picnic and all the things. And like, I had my camera and all the things. So we rented a dry bag to wrap all of our stuff up in. And as we're kayaking, so we're hanging out at this little island, having a good time. And then we're like, okay, let's go back. And so we're trying to get in our kayak and like off the shore. And it's proving to be a little tricky. And I don't know if there was like some wind that kicked up and the waves got a little big, but we get like, I don't know, a little way out. And all of a sudden, this giant wave comes and knocks us out of the kayak, like just totally tips us over. And we're like, oh crap. And our Crocs are like floating away. And thankfully, like the dry bag is floating and keeping all of our tech stuff dry. And so we flip the kayak over and we put all of our stuff back in. We're like swimming to get our shoes. That's the most hilarious part, is like our shoes start floating away. And we can't get back in the kayak. Like, we're like, how do you do this? And there were these tours of kayakers. And we were like, we can save money. We don't need to do it with a tour. And they see us struggling to get back in the kayak. And the tour guide dude comes over and he helps us. And we're like, thank you so much. And we're a little bit embarrassed, not going to lie. But after that, we kayaked back to the mainland and it was fine. So it was definitely a story and fun. And I get a little freaked out by being in the water with sea creatures. I love sea creatures, but we were kayaking and we're seeing these giant turtles, which are amazing, but I don't want to be in the water with them. Like, that like gives me the heebie-jeebies. I kind of skipped over this. In 2009, so all of our kids were born. Our last was born in 2008. I got a phone call one day from my husband's grandmother. And she tells me that my husband's mom passed away. She died from a drug overdose. And I was just like shocked. And so I called my husband at work and I said, you need to come home right now. And he's like, what? And like, it was one of those moments like, do I wait until he gets home or do I just tell him over the phone? And I just told him, like, I couldn't make him worry and be concerned the 20 minutes it would take him to get home. And I just said, your grandma just called and your mom died last night. And that is a hard thing to tell the person you love most in the world. So a little downtime, right? We took our youngest, who was 10 months, 9 months old at the time, and went to the funeral. Yeah, but another sad time, like amidst all of life that is happening, is, people pass away, people you love. And we got through that. And then another kind of slew of travel. We're not real big road trip people, but we did do a road trip to the Grand Canyon and camped along the way. We've done plenty of hiking in our time too. And that was fun. Another scary moment. Our son, who was 4 years old at the time, he went to the bathroom in this giant campground at the Grand Canyon Village. Him and his sisters went to the bathroom. We had breakfast. They went to the bathroom. And then he decided he could get back to the campsite by himself, and he went the wrong way. And then we didn't know where he was. The sisters came back and we were like, where's your brother? And they're like, we don't know. He wasn't out when we got out of the bathroom. And so he was lost in a giant campground for an hour. And oh my gosh, talk about mom freaking out. Like, at first I was just like, okay, we're going to find him. He's just wandering. It's fine. It's fine. But at the end of that hour, I was just like, oh my gosh, somebody kidnapped my kid, and like thinking of the worst. But turns out he just took a wrong turn and kept walking. And pretty soon we had pretty much everyone in the campground looking for this 4-year-old little boy. And these two older kids found him, and they tried to come up to him and talk to him, and he wouldn't talk to them. And so then the park ranger finds him and puts him in his truck. And it was kind of funny. Like, I'm freaking out and crying and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And Drew gets out of this truck and he's like, guess what, mommy? I got to drive in a truck with a gun. And I was like, okay. So we went through that together. And so it hasn't all been rainbows and daisies, like kids get hurt. One of my kids almost sliced her toe off one time. One of my kids cracked her head open, and thankfully my husband, he's always been there. Like, anytime there's been any kind of emergency or semi-emergency has been at a time when he is home. Because like, I guess Heavenly Father knows that I need him home when it really counts. There have been plenty of times when he hasn't been home and it has dumped lots of snow and I have had to shovel the driveway all by myself. So I guess it evens out, right? What else? So like I said, travel has been a big part of our marriage. And we just kind of have this thing that every 5 years we go on a big trip. So for our 15-year anniversary, we went on a Mediterranean cruise. It was amazing. It was so good. Highly recommend. Rome, Pompeii, Sicily, Athens, Santorini, Mykonos, Venice, Montenegro, Croatia, Slovenia. Actually, Venice was the last one. And just so many amazing memories, so much good food and sunshine and beaches and language and ruins, like going to the ruins in Rome and in Athens. We love that so much. So when I say that he is an amazing person to experience life with, I mean experience life with. And just such an amazing travel buddy. And so many good times. Actually, I kind of skipped over our first trip to Europe. First time either of us had been to Europe was a work trip for him. And so I got to tag along and we went to Turin, flew into Geneva, visited with his best friend who lived there at the time. And he drove over the Alps. And I will say, I am not the best passenger. What's it called? The person who has the map, who's the navigator. That's the word. I'm not the best navigator. I'm kind of slow to figure out, like, to orient myself on the map. And it was pretty funny driving for the first time in Europe. And of course, a stick shift, and to try to like figure out how to get to the hotel with all these crazy drivers. And the streets are super close together. And I'm like, where are the street names? How do I know what street we're at? And finally I figure out it's like actually on the building. And it was just quite comical, to be totally honest. And I'm like, and this was in 2012, before like we had to like call our cell phone company and like change our plan. And before it was kind of easy to travel internationally. And we didn't have like a lot of data on our phones. So we're like, this mapping is like taking up data and we're trying to do it as fast as possible. And I'm just like, but we got to the hotel. It was fine. It all worked out. It was just funny and a little bit scary, but he always stays very calm. So he's, again, a great travel partner. And then, of course, our move to Germany, which again, he took care of almost everything. I only had to like sign here, sign there, those kinds of things. Of course, I help make decisions about, should we rent this house or this one? But as far as like the logistics and all of the legwork on all of it, he just takes care of everything. He takes care of me in that way. And while we were there for a year, we got to travel around Europe. And so we saw Berlin and Tenerife and Florence and Rome and Pisa and Venice again. And, the Netherlands, Amsterdam, London, Paris, Prague, Barcelona, Mallorca. Oh my gosh, we had the best paella in Mallorca. We went on a little date, left the kids at the Airbnb. We had like been at the beach all day. They just wanted to chill and watch TV. And we said, okay, make yourself some cereal for dinner. We're going on a date. And this little town where we were, it was like this quaint little town, these little streets, and it was so beautiful. And we found a place to eat and had this paella. It was so, so good. So a lot of our memories center around food that we have had that was amazing. The best pizza in Turin. I remember when we went to Berlin, it was the first place we traveled to after moving to Europe, and we rented an Airbnb kind of in the heart of the city and went to this grocery store, and we were like, oh my gosh, pancake mix. And so we like made pancakes, and yeah, so we were excited about that. And then the last few years have been a blur. We have weathered a worldwide pandemic together. And even before that, we went to DC, and like, we've just done a ton of traveling. DC, New York City, driving around upstate New York, Niagara Falls, not to mention all the times that we have gone back to California or Seattle to like visit family, Arizona to visit family. So yeah, like it has been a good run. Honestly, like we've had good stories and we've had good times. We've done staycations and tons, of course, of vacations, as I've mentioned. We, not everything is, like I said, rainbows and daisies, but we have parented well together. I will say parenting teenagers is more difficult for us than parenting babies and toddlers. And I suspect parenting young adults is going to be even harder. But I am so grateful for this man that God put into my life. And I feel like, I honestly feel like I am the one that is blessed by our relationship more than he is the one that is blessed. Again, I just can't say how steady and loving and accepting and loyal and capable and smart he is. And I feel kind of like I don't deserve it, to be honest. But very recently, in the last couple of months, I was journaling and praying and thinking about, I can't even tell you what I was thinking about exactly, but throughout the process, I could see very clearly something that I hadn't seen before, which was this idea. I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, this idea that you marry your work. And when I heard that sort of phrase, I thought about like, how could that be true for me? Or is it true? And I was thinking about like your work in terms of what is difficult for you, what parts of you that are still, not polished. And so I was thinking about my marriage and like, man, like I've had a really good, easy marriage. We see eye to eye on a lot of things, on, finances and parenting. And I think that's what has made it really amazing, is that in some of the more difficult topics that in a lot of marriages become contentious, we agree a lot on a lot of that. And so I was kind of puzzled, like, how is it that I have married my work? And then this light bulb went off in my mind that the thing that I have to face within me is that he loves me so much, and that he sees the best in me. He sees my potential when I don't, when I get down on myself and judge myself, and really start to believe that like we had an actual, almost an argument of, I was saying like, I'm just a normal person. Like if you zoom way out and look at all of humanity, I'm just a normal person. And he emphatically disagrees with me. He says, you are not a normal person. You are amazing. You are smarter than the average person. You like, and he's just like, he's like a dog with a bone. He won't give up on it. And I like, this light bulb went off like, oh, that's my work, to believe in myself and love myself and accept myself the way he does for me. And how humbling and how grateful I am for that. So, Frankie Bremer, happy anniversary. I love you so much. I'm so grateful for you and this life that we have built. And I hope that you don't mind me airing it out to the whole world, because that's how much I love you. I want everyone to know how amazing you are. Okay, that is enough for now. That is a long one. Thank you for sticking with me. I am still going to drop the link to the survey that I have going. If you would click over to that and fill out the survey for me, I would be so grateful. And until next time, go be you and follow the spirit.